Welcome to Family Engagement Beyond the Newsletter, hosted by the Kentucky Collaborative for Families in Schools and the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood. This is an introduction to family engagement and how you can create strong family engagement programs at an early care and education center. The four objectives are split into four different sections. So this can make it easier for you to start and stop the module at your convenience. At the end of each section, you will have an opportunity to reflect and apply what you just learned. And we will give you prompts to pause and reflect at each of those points. And the first one we're going to go through is explaining the difference between family involvement and family partnership. The second one is listing roles families can play and how you can support these roles. Next, we'll learn about the dual capacity building framework. And then finally, we'll leave you with some concrete things that you can start doing now in your program to support stronger family engagement. These are the four resources that we use to create this training. Beyond the Bake Sale and Powerful Partnerships are excellent books to have on hand for family engagement. The dualcapacity.org website is really user-friendly and goes into the framework that we'll talk about in section 3. And then finally, we've created the Kentucky Family and Early Education Program Partnership Guide, which is chock full of great information, hot links, and other resources that you can find in Kentucky programs. So let's get started. Section 1, explain the difference between family involvement and family partnership. Is there a difference? Yes, there is. This video is about 5 minutes long, so get comfy, a little longer than some of us are used to watching a video these days. But it's really great at capturing what family partnership could do for kiddos. How could we really create a wraparound system between families and schools and early education programs that help the child thrive and really built on each party's funds of knowledge, which we'll unpack what funds of knowledge means later. This is really school-based, and you may feel as an early education provider, an infant toddler teacher or preschool teacher that it's a little more school-based than it is childcare focused, but I just encourage you to think about this video more from the mindset of what could quality family partnership mean for kids all the way through their education experience. So get comfy and let's enjoy this video together.
As we work to help every child succeed and to close gaps in student achievement, we often assume school is the main place that learning is going to happen. Take Esma. It used to seem to her family and her educators that Esma is always at school. Not true, it turns out. Esma and other students actually spend 82% of their waking hours at home or in their community. All those weekends, weeknights, and breaks add up. When they realized that, the educators in Esma's school district decided to work harder on making the most of the biggest partner in her learning life, her family. This can look different in every school, but for Esma's teacher, it means instead of spending his time arranging a traditional open house, he organizes grade-level parent meetings. Here, Esma's family saw data on how the class is doing in math, reading, social and emotional learning. They practiced new ways to help Esma at home and set goals for how they'll help her improve. Everyone learned from each other as the group talked about how to help the students. Also, near the start of the school year, some staff from Esma's school visited her home. They looked for the assets her family members can bring to the educational process. They learned about their languages, their culture, their lives, their world. Grandpa offered to be a resource for other English learner families, and the school also listened and learned from the family's perspective on Esma's needs. They learned how Mom helps her calm down and focus. This kind of family engagement also makes it easier for the district to develop individualized education programs for students, including those in special education. The foundation is already there for families to engage in their students' academic and career planning too, making that more effective. Throughout the year, the family can attend workshops at the school on things like mental health, homework, or career exploration. Esma's mom saw those meetings on a poster in her work break room, and now she's inviting other parent friends to go with her. Esma's school district works with local businesses, places of worship, the public library, and other partners to reach students and families where they're already spending time. The school provides information frequently in a variety of ways so they can reach every family. Text messages are offered in the most common languages of local families. Esma's family gets photos from her teacher so they know what she's doing during the day. Communication between the school and the family is a group effort focused on helping Esma achieve her learning goals. When Esma wasn't sure what to do on a science assignment, her family knew to contact the teacher for a little clarification. Educators take a positive approach as they look for solutions to any challenges experienced on either side. They're always looking for the family's strengths. Also, when mom mentions that Esma has trouble making friends, the teacher knows to refer her to the school counselor. The counselor then helps the family join a local Boys and Girls Club with lots of activities for Esma. The teacher knew to do this because the school counselor led staff trainings on resources available in the community and how to help families access them. There's no danger of a family like Esma's ever feeling like an occasional onlooker. The school knows what families have to offer, and the family knows what's going on in the classroom and how to support it. They feel they are active and regular collaborators and decision makers. The district gives families opportunities to learn how to help children succeed at each level of the school system and to serve on school groups. At school gatherings, Esma's adult stepsister and close next-door neighbor also feel included in the community. Staff at the school are trained to be as inclusive as possible, welcoming as learning partners anyone who cares about the child. Esma's school has moved from parent involvement to family engagement. Not surprisingly, engaged families help students learn better. Staff members like their jobs better. Everyone wins. This is backed up by over 40 years of research. Students with engaged families, no matter their income, background, or culture, are more likely to do well in school, enroll in ambitious courses, graduate, and go on to post-secondary education. They also have stronger social skills and fewer disciplinary issues. So how do we make it happen? First, we work to make the shift across an entire school district. Sure, at the elementary level, Esma's classroom teacher is the main person her family interacts with at school, but as she gets older and her schooling more complex, collaboration is definitely bigger than one person. Really, all along the way, the family's interactions with pretty much everyone in connection with the school, from office staff to after-school staff, from bus drivers to principals, will need to be positive for them to truly feel welcomed. So it's a clear expectation in the district. Every employee has a role in helping every family feel connected to their child's learning, no matter what building or classroom that child attends. In Esma's district, a broad team that included school psychologists, social workers, counselors, families, general and special educators, and after-school program staff helped everyone in the school take family engagement to this next level in a way that works for their community. It worked. Esma's family feels like a valued member of the team. Esma, her family, and her educators feel confident that she's learning and happy at school. We have more information about how schools and families can effectively engage with each other around students' learning on our website.
What if? So what stood out to you in this video about the possibilities of how real family partnership could change the education experience for kids? Just wanting you to take a moment to think about even your own experience in education and school and in early education, and how your families were or weren't involved and what that looked like, and how it might have been different had teachers and schools and even in the early education years really partnered with your family to bring in community resources, to offer suggestions for learning at home, just everything that we really saw from that child's experience, how much more we could do with kiddos if we were all working together as a team. So when we think about involvement, we think more about information. We have information that we're giving to families. We make sure that they're informed is really how you think about involvement. When you start thinking about engagement and partnership, you start thinking more about this two-way communication and this circling around kids as a team. So some definitions of family engagement, just to put it all into context. Here's some that we really loved from different national and state partners. Family engagement being a shared responsibility in which schools and other community agencies and organizations are reaching out to engage families in meaningful ways in which families are committed to actively supporting their children's learning and development. And that's from NAFSCE, National Association for Families, Schools, and Community Engagement. If you're looking for some great resources, they've got tons. Family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership, is how the Connecticut Statewide Family Engagement Center approaches it. And the National PTA has a wonderful definition, and they've got the word transformative family engagement as a shared effort. In Kentucky, we defined it like this. We looked at lots of definitions across different states and national groups, like the ones I just read, and we decided that we really see Kentucky as, and family engagement efforts as productive, equitable, and inclusive partnerships among families, educators, and the community to promote children's learning and development. And that happens all the way from birth through college and career success. That happens in the home, in the school and childcare buildings, and in the community. We go on to talk about how these relationships need to be active and reciprocal, and there needs to be true culturally appropriate collaboration happening. We use the following 5 terms pretty much interchangeably. So if you'll notice in the video, they really refer to what we call family partnership as family engagement. We use family and early education partnership, family engagement, family early education and community partnership, also engagement. We refer to all of those as family engagement or family partnership. So that's somewhat used interchangeably within this training and in our resources. Parent involvement is what is most frequently used in some of the Kentucky regulations when you get through that kindergarten through 12th grade space. But when they're describing parent involvement, they really are describing more than involvement. They talk about parent involvement as a two-way communication. So sometimes those words can get kind of tricky when you're thinking about involvement to engagement to partnership. So we just wanted to pause here to say that when we talk about engagement, we're talking about what we saw in that video, that true team partnership. So a couple words that we hope stand out to you as listeners and participants in this module are the ones highlighted on this page. Just take a minute to scan the words that you see on the page. We can do this better. How we used to think versus what we know now. Involvement. We used to really think about partnering with families as a doing to families, information they need to absorb from us, events that we would hold and sit and get. So they come and learn from us, but we don't get a whole lot from them. We want to move to systems where we're partnering with families. We're doing with families. We're educating their child with them rather than a service that they're receiving. We want to move away from just giving information to building family skills. So an example of this is if you're having a literacy night and you're showing families, how to do dialogic reading. This is the best way to read to your child. Instead of just telling families what that is, you have an opportunity for families to practice, to do some role playing, some examples, working with their kiddo as teachers are kind of walking around and supporting families and building that skill. So we don't just throw it on a flyer and send it home in the backpack. We have skill building opportunities or do a YouTube tutorial. So anytime there's something that you really feel like a family should know, rather than just giving the information to them in a one-way communication, have that interactive opportunity for families to build their skills. We really want to move away from always having large group gatherings. Sometimes that's necessary, but when we're thinking about partnering with families more intentionally, we need to think about how can we have more one-on-one conversations? How can we break some of those orientation nights and some of those, show and tell nights where you open up the center to families to show art or to show different, Christmas events, those sort of things. How can that be maybe all the infant toddler rooms are one night, the 2-3-year-olds are another night, and the preschool rooms are a separate night. just to allow more one-on-one conversations between families and teachers and to get families interacting more with each other. Sometimes we call the families only when there's issues or problems. And if you're a parent yourself, you know how that feels. If the school's calling, then something's gone wrong. They're hurt or they're misbehaving. We really want to move to celebrating milestones and progress together with families. So having systems in place at your childcare center where you regularly communicate happy moments with the families builds those trusting relationships so that when we do have to call with issues or problems, we've already set that strong, trusting foundation with our families. In that same vein, we want to move away from the come if we call school to sharing funds of knowledge. Come if we call means if we invite you to orientation night, or we invite you to a family conference, or we invite you to talk about your child's challenging behaviors, that's when you come. Rather, we want families to feel like it's an open door, always to a conversation flowing between the school and home. We call it funds of knowledge, and this is Dr. Karen Mapp, who we referenced in those two books earlier. This is her kind of catchphrase. And funds of knowledge means there's things I know as the parent that could really help the teacher, and there's things the teacher knows that could really help me as a parent. We have to constantly be sharing those funds of knowledge. One way that I've seen a lot of childcare centers do this, which is a great way to start that, is just sending home just like that daily log that says, we had a great day today. We helped a friend when he fell down today. That was great, showing such kindness. Just every day having like a sentence that goes home to the family that gives them a little clue into how that day went. And then offering to the families that that's a great way for them to share information back to you so that they can write on that daily log, we just moved houses, so we're in a transition period, or it's been really hard at home, grandma just died, or just having that opportunity for families to regularly share what's going on in that kid's life is a great way of kind of tapping into that celebration of milestones and funds of knowledge. On a deeper level, it would be sending home things that really get at, tell me what's great and awesome about your kid. Tell me their strengths, tell me their interests. If I know that your child loves, trains and cars, that's really helpful to me when I'm trying to get him interested in learning his sight words, or I'm trying to get him interested in books. There's information families know that teachers need, and there's information teachers know that families need. That is the crux of that one. We used to kind of assume that families knew how to support their child's education. Oh, they know how to reach us if they need us. They know how to support their kids' education, once they get to big school. Not always true. And more often than not true at all. I even know as a parent of a kindergartner and a fourth grader that I really needed help in knowing what my role, rights, and expectations were. Early education providers have the perfect opportunity to set that tone with families. You're teaching families, this is how much you are or aren't invited to the table of your kids' education. Wow, that is a big responsibility in the early education setting. You're showing families, this is how this works. So you're sending them off to kindergarten with the expectation of, I drop them off and don't ask questions. I come if they call, right? Or I know what it feels like to be a true partner in my kids' education. So when I get to kindergarten, I'm expecting phone calls. I'm expecting exchanges of information. I'm expecting to be a partner. So we have to help families start off on the right foot when they get into kindergarten. And family engagement is not a program. It's not something we'll get to or we'll implement later after we get all of these other things off the ground. Family engagement is the way to student achievement. It is the way to early learning. We need to engage families so that we can be more effective in our jobs. All of this in mind, there's that 40 years of research, which was quoted in the video at the beginning. And this is actually 2002. So this is an older research point, data point, but new research just compounds this to be even more important and true, especially with COVID. But that students with involved backgrounds, no matter what their income or background, are more likely to earn higher grades, pass their classes. This has a lot to do with truancy. We see a big connection with parent involvement in social emotional development and behavior. And we even see a connection with those families that are involved, those kiddos going all the way through to something post high school. So you've made it to the end of section 1. I hope that there's been something in this information and in these slides or in that video that caused you to just kind of take pause and say, well, what is the difference between involvement and partnership? Do I really understand the difference of just involving and informing families versus truly partnering with families? So pause this video now and reflect in your reflection journal what you see as the difference. I also encourage you at the end of this section to just take time to get your bearings on where you're at before you learn more about family engagement, because we're going to start to get into different roles families can play, ideas for your center, and we're going to close out with a self-assessment that you can do to see how your classroom and school building is partnering with families. So for now, take a moment to reflect on any ahas that you've had and that are on your mind right now. Welcome back. Section 2, Introduction Module for Early Education Beyond the Newsletter. In this section, we're going to talk about roles families can play and how you can support each role. It's time to redefine family and community engagement. This is one of my favorite articles. It's short, it's sweet, but it really sends a powerful message about the different roles that families can play and are playing. So pause this video now and either download the article from the link that's provided, or it's copy and pasted in your learning packet. I'm also going to put it on the screen in case that's easier. You have 3 ways to get to this article. Okay, hopefully you had enough time to read that and one of the three ways it was offered to you. How can you relate to Dahab's story from your own childhood? Just reflecting for a minute on what that story meant to you. For me, it brought up a lot, even in teaching these courses and working in this field. I'm not sure I'd stop to really think about my own experience with family engagement. My mom was very supportive in my engagement at home, or in my school at home, but she didn't attend a lot of the bake sales or the PTA meetings. I would assume in early education, she dropped me off and picked me up. And I don't know how much conversation there was or wasn't with my childcare providers. So from the outside looking in, she may have looked like an uninvolved parent who didn't value my education because she wasn't there a lot. She didn't show up a lot. She was there if I was in trouble or if I was making bad grades, she would have been there. Um, but as far as kind of volunteering, she worked full time and she wasn't there. And as I've talked in live trainings about this story, I think that's a lot of people's experiences. And we know that from our own experience. But I think sometimes we lose that when we're thinking about engaging families of the kiddos in our classrooms. We assume, well, they didn't show up for the parent teacher conference, or they didn't come to the book fair event, or they didn't come to this event or that event, or I've left messages, they don't respond, they don't care, or they're not involved, or they're too busy. And that's not always true. We do know that all families care about their kids, and they may be supporting you in ways that you're not even aware of behind the scenes. This is a really cool graphic that gets to that. It's about the 5 roles families can play to accelerate student learning. This is available on the website where you downloaded this video. You can download this really cool handout. But it just shows the 5 different ways that families are supporting or could support their child's education. And again, this is important as early care providers that we zero in on this for families early on so they can start to see themselves as partners, even if they can't attend in person or maybe just aren't comfortable attending in person. They can communicate high expectations to their kiddos. They can start that early. We can value homework, value what they're doing in class. Wow, tell me about this project you did with Miss Lindsay. What all were you doing here? You can start communicating those high expectations really early. And this is where it's important for early care providers too, to explain to families that power and importance of early brain development. So they understand that right now, what they're learning in dramatic play and social emotional learning and what they're getting with their early, letters and numeracy skills, that sets the foundation for future learning. So this is time to care about what they're learning. And also this is your opportunity to start partnering. They can monitor their child's performance, explain to them these different screeners and things that we use in the classrooms in early education and what those are going to look like when they get through to K through 12. How they can support their learning at home, give them tools. We have so many cool ideas as early education providers that we could share with families, that they could, conversation starters they could have in the car, ways that they can point out different things in the child's environment, how you talk to a kiddo when they have an idea. Oh, wow, that's a really great idea. Tell me more about that. Little things like that that probably come very natural to you could be huge tools for families. And they can guide their child's education. So they can help them understand the experience from preschool all the way through college and how those can be building blocks each step of the way. And in early education, we have the opportunity to tell them school doesn't start in kindergarten. School has already started. We have already started to lay some of those critical foundational tools, not only in their behavior in a classroom, but also for the learning that'll come next. And advocating for their child. We teach families in early education what their role is. So if we show them that they can advocate for their child, and actually they have to advocate for their child, they need to learn what's unique about their kiddo. You could probably already tell sometimes in early education things that family might struggle with or is going to be challenged by in the bigger school system. go ahead and set that kid and that parent up for success. Give them the tools, the information that they need to be advocates for their kid. 5 roles families can play. Another way to think about roles families are playing that maybe aren't something that we see in the school building is the iceberg analogy. I'm sure you all have seen this iceberg used for all kinds of things. I have, but I like it in family engagement too, because what you see on the top is always just part of the story of all the things happening underneath. And that goes for family engagement too. So we see if they attend or they didn't attend the school event, they answered or they didn't answer the phone call. They are advocating for their child with school staff or they're not. They sign that paper you sent home or they don't. That's sometimes all we can judge family engagement on, but there's so much more happening and could be happening right behind the scenes. Are they encouraging their child at home? You know, maybe this kid's having a really hard time every day, even wanting to go to school. And that parent is saying, oh, but you love school. You love Miss Lindsay. You can't wait to see her. You're going to see all your friends. And for them, that might be how they're partnering with you and trying to get them off on the right foot, but you don't see any of that. And you might have tools that could help with some of that morning struggle that could really make that parent's job easier as they're trying to encourage their child to like going to school. Discussing high expectations, talking to, it says students about coursework. Of course, we're not going to talk about coursework for a 2-year-old, but parents can play a role in asking questions about what they did at school or who'd you play with on the playground or tell me about what book you read. Just talking about school with a kid can encourage them to have a more positive outlook about going to school. So we just need to always remember that it's not always what you see. There's always more to the story. And we have to, as providers, be willing to keep open minds and know that they may be doing a lot more behind the scenes than we can see. So what does this mean? Something that we thought about as the Kentucky Collaborative for Families and Schools, and so this was families and educators together, is that when we think about improving family engagement, right, we have to get beyond the top of that iceberg. We have to get beyond who read and didn't read the newsletter, who did or didn't attend the family event. Instead, we have to put our time and energy into strategies that help staff get to know families so we can build trusting relationships between families and teachers. So family engagement is all about how do we get to that human to human moment? How do we become trusting partners who talk with understanding, open minds, and are valuing what the other party brings to the table? One quote we really loved, and in the thick of all of this work, we listened to a presentation by Carnegie Center and Harvard Early Education and education groups, and they had an hour and a half full of awesome content. But at the end, one of the panelists said, or one of the facilitators asked the panelists, so you're telling us we just need to sit down and talk to families? And the panelists said, yes, we actually sit down and talk to families. So if you get nothing else from this section of the training, it's that we have to talk to each other to understand, what do you need from me and what do I need from you? This is a great example of how when you lay that groundwork with families and understanding who they are and what their kiddo's all about, how it just sets you up for success down the road. So let's listen to this parent reflect on how her teachers built a relationship with her.
Well, immediately after the home visit, I was then invited to a back to school night they were having in Stanton. They gave me the little flyer. I was like, well, we're having a back to school night. It's from this time and this time. Bring the kids, like a meet and greet the teachers and everyone that was going to be there. But one thing I can say about, Staten period is that it is constant communication, something I never had, something I completely enjoy. And it's not just negative communication, it's constant positive communication. I can be here at home, at work, anywhere, and one of my teachers would send me a text. Or I used to love it, Miss Lucas would send pictures, take pictures of them doing classwork, and she said, "You'll see, look how my Tanae, well, I call her Bird. The school calls her Bird, which I love because it's like a community. They adopted her nickname, so she would send me a text like, "Look at Bird. She's having a wonderful day today, and she's doing good." But in saying that, that allowed me to hear. It put a trust. I put a trust in Miss Lucas for doing that. So no matter what she said, how she had to say it, what the information is, it made it easier for me to receive it from her, because she had built this communication, this trust that I never had. So I tell people now, friendship. You know what I'm saying? We're not friends to talk every single day, but she's a person that I will always hold in a high regard. She will always have my respect. I really respect Miss Lucas, and I value her so much, because not just her, but all the teachers, but like she was the first one to really extend herself to me. And I would get the text, and then one day Tanae had a bad day, and she called me, and I was expecting to hear something good. Oh, she got good on her test, or she did read, and she was like, "Well, we had a bit of an issue today." I'm like, "For real? What happened?" "Well, Tanae did X, Y, and Z." And I didn't get defensive. I didn't get, "Well, what did you do?" Or what did I actually sat back and I listened, and I received the information, and I processed the information. For me, that was something different, because at that point in time, I felt it like, why am I getting mad? Because normally when you call me on the phone and you telling me something about my child did this, I'm naturally on the defense, like, well, what did you do to make my child do this? Or who was messing with her in class, because my baby's a good baby. But in this time, it was different. And I don't know, it's because of the positive, feedback she gives me every day, the friendship we brought. It just made, when she was telling me what was going on, I took a breath, I stopped, and I listened. And then I was like, we actually got to a place where we worked together. I said, "Well, you know what, since she's having a bad day, can you put her on the phone?" And I spoke with her on the phone, and I let her know that me and Miss Lucas are working together. We are a team, and if she asks you to do something, you need to treat it as if mommy is asking you to do something. So if she asks you to sit down, you need to sit down. And there was no more problems with Tanae.
All right. So in your journal, you have, oh, okay, technical difficulty there. All right, in your journal, at the end of section 2, you've got 3 questions to answer. And these are really neat reflection questions given the content of this section. First, what's one way you could better support families with skills they can use at home? So as we're thinking about these different roles families can play, and okay, let's think about these families that probably similar to your family, I know similar to mine, were there to support me, but it was more at home. How thankful my mom would have been for some resources from my teachers that could have helped her support my learning at home. So what's one way, infant teacher, toddler teacher, preschool teacher, that you could help families in this role they want to play at home? So an example I gave was just maybe every month you share one game families can play in the car or at dinner time that helps build literacy and numeracy skills. So, you have a bulletin board outside your classroom, or you have a newsletter that you send out, and you just have one activity idea of what families could be doing during dinner or while they're in the car that helps, expand that learning at home. The second question I want you to answer is, how can you begin learning how families want to be involved, i.e. what role they want to play? So this is a great opportunity to share with families that there are different roles. And when they get to K through 12, they need to understand that they don't have to join the PTA to be involved in their kids' education and to play a powerful role. Maybe you share that one pager during the beginning of the school year that says, hey, here's an example of 5 different roles you can play. Which one resonates with you the best? Also ask them how they like to be communicated with. Some folks love the apps and the reminds. Some folks like to be, have a phone call or have an email. You may also learn that their home language is different than yours. So at the beginning of the school year is a great time. Or if your school goes year round, you may just kind of select a month that's a little slower for you than other months. And that's the time that you really look into the different roles that your families are playing or could play or want to play. And you make note of that so that you can encourage that as the provider. The third question we want you to think about is how can you begin the exchange of family and provider funds of knowledge? So we talked a little bit about funds of knowledge in section 1, but here it comes back full circle when we think about the different roles families can play. So possibly when you have a new student in your class, you could have a separate form that asks families what's unique and special about your kid. What makes him or her nervous or excited or shy? I've had teachers do this before for my kids, and I really appreciate those questions because it gives me the opportunity. For one, Jack, when he gets nervous, he makes a lot of jokes. That is his defense mechanism. That is an important fund of knowledge for his teachers to know, because what could be coming off as class clown or showing out, if they don't see that as, oh, Jack's nervous, they could actually make him more nervous by calling him out or fussing at him. And if they realize, oh, he's nervous because we have a visitor today, and they can just kind of take Jack to the side and be like, hey, buddy, you want to sit next to me? Then that calms him right down, and that eliminates all of that kind of classroom disruption really quick. That's a funds of knowledge that I got to get out of my brain into the teacher's brain. So where can you do that for your families and kiddos in your class? How can you start getting that information out? Likewise, I meet a lot of providers that have these special trainings, and I always wonder, do the families know that you have that special training under your hat? So if you've had either your own experience with a child with autism, or you've gone to a training on autism, challenging behaviors, early childhood trauma, those are things that's nice to let your families know so that they can ask you questions. Hey, I saw on the getting to know you form that you have special training in dyslexia. Like, I really think my kid might, be dyslexic. Can you help me? So let them know what funds of knowledge you have to offer. So you'll end this module by answering these 3 questions in your journal, and then you'll be ready to go on to section 3, dual capacity building framework. We're back for section 3 of the introduction module, getting beyond the newsletter for early education providers. In this section, we're going to talk about the dual capacity building framework. The first activity of this section is maybe my favorite of all 4 sections. It's 4 versions of a family partnership school. You have this handout in your learning journal, and you also have a link to it, and it's up on the screen. So kind of like the Hop story, we've got 3 options for you to follow along with this activity. Just take about 5 minutes and go ahead and rank yourself on which type of school you currently are. If you need more time, pause the video, but for those who kind of crank through this pretty quick or have already done it before, I'm going to keep moving on. This is just a nice reflective activity to we call it a pulse check. We really suggest using the self-assessment, which is a longer 5 objective scoring guide that gives you a level 1, level 2, level 3. But this is a wonderful way to start thinking about where your school is. It is K through 12 based. like everything. But this is something that you could easily think about an early education center, and just kind of a couple tweaks of the different language. So hopefully this was a neat activity. Don't feel bad if you're a Come If We Call school. I would say 80% of folks I do this activity with are Come If We Call schools, even those that think that they're partnership schools. So the foundation for our work is the dual capacity building framework. I highly encourage you to go to this website on your own and check it out. It has been adopted by the U.S. Department of Education as the framework for family engagement. I think one of the main reasons that it's so popular is that it puts a very complicated subject like family and school partnerships into a very simple graphic that we can all look at. It's easy on the eyes. It's not an overwhelming amount of information. But if you apply the concepts that are in this framework, your family engagement program will be extremely effective and high impact. So if we start with just the challenge areas, it shows us that the reason family engagement is so hard are for a couple reasons. Educators haven't always been exposed to strong examples of family engagement. So you may feel like you're being told constantly to partner with families, yet you have no idea what that really looks like. Received minimal training. I think early education is above most as far as K through 12 folks in the training that we receive with working with families, just because the nature of working with little ones is more hand in hand with families than maybe a middle school teacher, but still minimal training, not a whole lot of training. You've probably not received a whole lot of training on what it really looks like to work with families. You may not see it as an essential practice. You may have gotten burnt a few times. You tried to involve families, you tried to reach out, you tried to partner, and it just didn't go well. And so you try to do your job in spite of the families. And I've heard that, and it doesn't come from a bad place. It just comes from bad experiences. And developed a deficit mindset around it. I've tried it, it didn't work. It's a whole lot of effort on my end with not a lot of payoff. On the flip side, families, for the same reasons, haven't been exposed to strong examples of family engagement. A lot of families had negative experiences with schools in the past. In their own childhood, school was not a pleasant place. It's not pleasant memories. And so coming into a school building, even if it's an early education center, can feel like bad memories and past trauma. So they want to drop off and they want to pick up and they don't want to set foot in that building. And that has nothing to do with you or their child. It has everything to do with their past experiences. Especially in our school buildings, they feel like fortresses. Somebody said the other day, you have to scan your retina just to get in. We have developed so much school safety protocol, which is necessary and great in some ways, but it also makes families feel like they're really not invited in the building at all. And you may have similar protocol even for your early education center, and especially, coming out of COVID, we all have new rules in place. And so the environment itself doesn't feel all that welcoming. And this is where Zoom calls came in handy for a lot of folks because, you could join from the comfort of your home and you eliminated that entire school building feeling and experience. Cultural issues we sometimes see with the disrespect, unheard, and unvalued. That could be cultural barriers and differences, and it could just be just the role of parent to teacher. There feels like there's an unbalanced level of respect and worth in terms of the child's education. The next section is the process and organizational conditions. So the idea of this graphic is that each level builds on the previous. So those challenges in mind, what conditions do we need to have in place? Well, we've got to start with strong relationships. We've got to link the learning and development to our family engagement activities. So I encourage you a little bit to challenge the idea of family engagement programs that are in place for fun. They can be fun, but they should be meaningful. And that's why we have the word productive in our family engagement definition. It should be productive time. If I'm going to my kid's school for a Valentine's party, that's all cute and great, but while I'm there, teach me something I can take home to support my kids' learning, or show me something you're doing in class that's supporting their social and emotional skills, or walk me around the classroom, tell me about the different centers. Use that as an opportunity when you do get families in person to show them the value of what you're doing in your classroom. Link it to learning. Asset-based, just trying to stay strength-based with our communications as much as we can, recognizing implicit bias, recognizing differences in culture, and being respectful and responsive to those, making sure interactions feel collaborative so that we feel like we're talking and they're talking, and it's not all from the provider to the family. So back to some of that stuff we were talking about in the section 2, doing with families rather than to families. And interactive goes along with collaborative a little bit. Whenever you can have an opportunity for families to kind of roll up their sleeves and dig in to something that you're doing, planting a garden or setting up for an event, always bring the families in as equal partners in an interactive environment as much as you can. We're going to skip over organizational conditions. We go over those a little bit more in the center director training. So, but they're there for you. And then I really like this green column. It's one of my favorite ways to check the level of effectiveness of a family engagement program. And it's the 4C areas. And this is for educators and for families. So when we're thinking about a program being high quality, does it pass the 4C test? Are you building family skills and knowledge? Are you helping them connect either to other families or to the teachers in real one-on-one conversations? Are you shifting their values and beliefs? So did I come into this thinking school's a terrible place, I hate school, and I leave feeling the same way? Or do I come into school and say, oh man, childcare is a lot different than it used to be, or I really see a role for myself in my kids' education that I hadn't seen before? Are we helping kind of shift those values and beliefs? And confidence. Are families leaving family engagement events or family conversations with staff at your center with more confidence in their role as the parent? So we'll do an activity with those here in a minute, but I do love the 4 C's. And so when we start with the challenges, we create conditions for success. I would say setting ourselves up for success with those conditions. Then we start with the end in mind. Little tweaks to current programs can make the 4 C's come to life, and you'll see so much more productiveness from those interactions. Then we get into the outcomes that we're really after. Educators feel like they're connecting with families, that they're really sharing about the child's learning and development. They feel like the families are co-creators in the design of the kids' education, that they're honoring the family's funds of knowledge. They see Carter acting up in class, and the first thing educators think is, let me check in with his mom about something's going on. We just automatically have that relationship in place to where it comes full circle. And the culture just feels welcoming. Families don't feel like the oddball in the room. They feel invited into the space and into the conversation. Similarly, families find their way, which is what we talked about in section 2, their role. Yeah, I'm not really a co-creator. I'm more of a support from home. I'm not really big on, doing the homework and doing the worksheets. And I feel a little awkward with those little dinner questions you gave me. That's not really my role, but I'm an advocate for equity in education. And that's where I want to find my voice. So you're helping families find their role, find their footing in education. And that really leads to the effective partnerships. And as I've said probably too many times, but I just can't underline, bold, and score it enough, we set folks up for success in the early education environment. We send them out the door to kindergarten, either fired up, engaged, and confident, or we send them out the door with the idea that this is for teachers and I need to kind of just stand back and come if they call. All right, so that's the dual capacity building framework. On this website, you can find lots of videos, all about Dr. Karen Mapp, who's kind of the author of it. And then you can even go up to into this section and go into depth about each of the sections, in case I left you hungry. The 4 core beliefs that underscore all of what we just went through are essential for your own mindset and going into family engagement. So I challenge you to look these over and circle the belief that resonates with you the most, or the one that you're like, yeah, duh, of course. And then I want you to star the belief that challenged you the most or may have given you a pause, like, I don't know if I believe that. And it's okay. You've got to be honest with yourself and where you are in your beliefs around family engagement in order to continue moving forward. So pause this video now and just take a minute to reflect on these 4 core beliefs in your learning journal. We touched on the process and organizational conditions, just pulling them back up here, kind of all on their own. Relational being the first one, that you've got to start family engagement with that mutual trust. So how do we get to know families in a way where everyone feels comfortable talking and communicating with each other? So the 4 C's, for families and educators, I want you to have an activity here where you, in your learning journal, scrap piece of paper anywhere you want. You don't have to do it any sort of way. I want you to list a list of all of your current family engagement programming, all of the family engagement programming happening at your school. Family engagement touch points is what they're sometimes referred to. So you could orientation night, enrollment, parent-teacher conferences, when you talk about screening results. So just pause this video, take a moment to list all of your current family engagement programming happening right now. All right, you probably knew where this was headed. Now give it a big check mark if it can pass the 4C test. So when you think about that first program in your list, do families walk away with new skills? Do families walk away with the name, or at least, comfortable, a new relationship with another parent at that center or with a staff member? They increase their connections. Does that program have the ability to shift beliefs and values? Do you feel like it's deep enough and strong enough of a program that folks may leave, okay, I see what they're doing, or I see the value in early education. Even the value in early education, sometimes we have to make sure that families understand that school starts before kindergarten, that learning starts before kindergarten. Confidence. Do families leave with their head held a little higher? Like, I can do this. I can support my kids' learning. So we've come to the end of section 3. Very interesting model, very interesting way to frame how you think about family engagement. So for the closing activity in this section, I want you to rewrite a family engagement touch point so that all 4 C's are accomplished. So if you didn't have any programs to write down, maybe you're new to a child care center, or you're just kind of getting into this, parent-teacher conference is a great place to start, or you could start with kind of like that enrollment conversation, or classroom party. So think about that touch point and how you could build all 4 C's into that touch point. So I'll give the example. It's an example I give a lot, but I feel like it's a pretty good one. is that you have a Valentine's party. Everybody comes to this party, and a lot of times families just kind of stand around and watch the action. So the teacher's running around with their head cut off, getting everybody, together and doing the craft. And there's always that one parent that kind of steps up and helps the teacher. And the rest of the families are like glued to the wall, don't know what to do with themselves, don't want to interrupt the teacher, don't want to, kind of do the wrong thing. And so sometimes it's a little bit of this like fishbowl experience. And so it can be really awkward and hard on everyone. What you could do with a party like that is that you make it very interactive and collaborative, right? Let's go to our process conditions. And you could have an activity where it's linked to learning. So during the Valentine's party, we're going to talk about how we're learning early numeracy and counting. And so the kids could show their parents something they've been learning in class, or show them around the room and show them something that they've been doing. And then pair the parents with another parent. So you have two parents building a connection, right? So if you look at those 4 C's, the skill I'm building is that you're showing me an activity that my kid's doing that hopefully I could even replicate at home. So maybe it's with like everyday items from home that I could make that activity and we could do that activity at home. Or maybe we're making something together that we then get to take home and practice with. I'm paired with another parent, so we're chit-chatting and, oh yeah, I know, and my kid does that too. And I'm kind of building this bond with another parent. And then I've had this experience where I was really collaborative. It was really interactive. I learned something. So I probably had the opportunity to shift any kind of negative feelings I may have had coming in. And I absolutely left more confident in myself as a parent. I had really great bonding time with my kid. I met this other parent. I'm taking home this activity that we can do tonight. So that's an example of how an engagement opportunity or a touch point could be shifted in a real way based on the dual capacity model to have a much higher impact. So to close out this activity, think of a touch point with families, how you can make sure you get a check mark for all 4 C's, and then give yourself bonus points if you can also check mark off the essential conditions. And then another bonus point if you could actually have a family member help you co-design, co-create this project of inner strategy. So how do you every year recruit a parent to help you put that Valentine's party? How could you have that parent help you co-design that Valentine party? You can also think of these things by Zoom. You can have every other month, you do a Zoom call with all the families and kiddos, and you can have a similar type of skill building activity to show and tell. That will do it for section 3. The next one will be section 4, everyday strategies. You've made it to the end of the introduction module, Getting Beyond the Newsletter, Family Engagement Strategies for Early Care and Education Programs. This section is super short and just gives you concrete ideas and strategies that kind of puts all of the concepts into action. So ideas into action. At the end of this module, you'll be asked to name 2 strategies that you plan on using now to promote family partnerships. So just keep those in mind as I kind of fly through them. Enrollment sets the tone. So giving families a 1-pager that sets the expectations that families are the key partner in the success of the child. In this 1-pager, you're going to want to lay out what you can expect from the program and what you all expect from the family. So this really gets at that we have a role and you have a role. Things you can include from the program would be that you're going to hear from the director monthly, you're going to have frequent communication from your child's teacher, maybe quarterly we have these family sessions we hope you attend, and then just additional ways that you're going to help them support learning at home. And then describe what you expect from the family. We want you to play a role in your child's education in any of the following ways. list all of the ways that families can support their kids' education and have them check mark which one interests them. That gives you great insight to where that family's coming from and what they're kind of interested in. Also have the expectation that families will be involved by sharing their dreams and hopes for their child. So we really love the opportunity here to do a hopes and dreams letter. We love this at middle and high school too, but early education is a wonderful opportunity for families to write a letter to their kid and say, here's the hopes and dreams that I have for you. This is a wonderful way for educators and providers to understand some of that core beliefs that we got to in the dual capacity module. So seeing that all families have hopes and dreams for their kiddos is a great way to start off on the right foot and gives you a little bit of an idea of maybe some of the story of this family and child. And that's just, again, kind of attending quarterly family nights where they can meet other families and learn new ways of working with their child. So enrollment sets the tone. Don't just send them home with a pile of paperwork and tell them to send it back in their kid's backpack. Number 2, greet every family by name instead of Jack Small. Learn your family's names, learn their home languages and translate materials. Create signage in your building that sets the tone. We're better together. You know, families and teachers, funds of knowledge. Ask us what that means. You're your child's first and most important teacher. Put up the 4 beliefs of family partnership. These are the different roles families are playing at the center. Just have signage throughout your building that sets that tone and gives that message that this is a family and educator and provider partnership is happening here. This is a all hands on deck type of program. During staff meetings, you could reflect on the 4 core beliefs. Again, those are kind of foundational to all things family engagement. So you want to make sure that all staff have thought about those core beliefs and are kind of wrestling with those core beliefs as they think about family engagement. It's also a great time in a staff meeting for staff to be honest about families they have a hard time partnering with. What's interesting when you do that activity, and I've seen it time and time again, is that different staff have a hard time with different types of families. So some staff are really great with a particular type of family. I have, one staff might be like, I just don't work well with dads. It's just not my cup of tea. For some reason, I have a hard time connecting with dads. And somebody else might be like, oh man, the dads all day long. It's the moms I struggle with. Or you might have bilingual staff. And so just making sure that you've got staff people somewhat assigned to some of the families that you feel like might be slipping through the cracks because they're difficult for maybe that primary teacher. And that same note, intentionally notice which families aren't attending the events, which families are you not seeing? So make that a practice in your staff meetings to say, is there anybody we're just not hearing from, we're not seeing, they're not signing things, it's a different person at pick up and drop off every day. Take notice of that and have someone on your staff. It doesn't always have to be the center director. It could be a staff person that maybe has clicked with that family. Reach out and ask the family, what's going on? How can we best communicate with you? We're here to help if you need resources. Invite community partners to host parent workshops. This is a great way for them to promote their services. And this is a great way for you to get the families together without always having to plan an agenda and entertainment and a night of activities. So invite community partners to come in. This is really cool with the extension offices. They offer cooking classes. They often give away free crock pots. And so inviting community partners in to host your parent workshops works really well. We stumbled upon Zoom and COVID like never before, and a lot of families loved it. So don't throw it away as you go back to in-person events. Utilize these online platforms to send quick videos and messages to families. I love this like calendar YouTube video right here. She's explaining kind of, here's what we do in class every day. Families love that. They love to have an inside look at what's going on in the classroom. So you could do Zoom story times at night. So you could do this little advertisements during the day by a public library, but I love the idea of doing a Zoom story time by the child care center, maybe once a week. You could have the staff kind of divide up, and at 8 o'clock on every Tuesday night, you have Zoom story time where the families get to meet a staff person and the kiddos get to hear a story, and you can pre-record them if you want to. or you could make it interactive. Every classroom posts weekly schedule on Monday outside of their door by text and by email. So it's always nice to kind of cover all bases because different families like to see the information in different ways. Always include a here's what you can do at home section. It doesn't have to be huge. You could say, we're introducing the letter, C this week. What can you do at home? Ask your child which new letter they started this week, or ask your child, point out different words that start with the letter C, or, just give them an idea of how they can show their child they know what's going on in the classroom and feel involved. Every staff person wears a name tag. I've heard this from a lot of families that it's just hard to kind of keep up with all of the staff sometimes working at early education centers, and they almost feel embarrassed. And I've been there too, where I know I should know her name, but I don't remember it. And I'm too embarrassed now to ask. That right there can create some barriers to engagement, just in that I don't know your name. And so have staff wear name tags just all the time, just first name on their shirts, and posting bios on the classroom, outside the classroom, and on the school website, so that families feel like they can get to know the staff at a center. Hosting family conferences, and we suggest family conferences versus parent-teacher conference, and encouraging families to invite whoever you want, whoever is your family, whoever is supporting your child. That's who we want at this conference. So if you want to bring the whole kit and caboodle, go for it. And sometimes this is more comfortable online. So again, utilize those online opportunities to meet with families and allow them to bring whoever they would like to bring to that conversation that might make them feel more comfortable. Make sure that the tone of family communications is respectful and promote partnership. This has been an interesting activity with some folks on trainings as they pull out their communications and think, if I was a parent, would this feel good to receive? And sometimes the answer is, oh, no, it feels cold. It feels just not friendly and not welcoming. And so we can get the same information across, but we can rewrite some of the things that we send out to families in a way that lands a little friendlier. Highlight and celebrate families and staff who are doing this. So as you see cool examples happening, especially center directors, take that opportunity and spotlight it. It could be like a spotlight in the hallway, on the bulletin board, on the website, in the newsletter. But folks love new examples of what you mean by powerful partnerships. And as families and staff partner in really neat ways, ask if you can share the story with other families and staff. Have a prominent place on the website. When you go to the website, it should feel very family friendly. Wherever staff and families meet, so staff meetings and family meetings, make it welcoming in adult-sized chairs. I know we've all been there. Sitting in a little toddler chair for an hour is not comfortable. Making it look like a living room has shown to be really effective. So if you can make kind of that parent room, and oftentimes that doubles as the staff lounge or area, just make it cozy and welcoming. Survey families every year. Is it working? Make the survey very friendly. Do you feel welcome at our school? Do you like the parent workshops we're having? Why do you attend or why don't you attend? Just do little check-ins twice a year with families just to see if what you're trying with family engagement is working. And it's always nice if you can get families to help you decorate that living room. If you can have families help you put up those signs. When you can get input from families, then you save yourself a lot of trouble in finding out later through surveys that what you tried didn't do what you wanted it to. At least monthly, staff send home activities that families can do with their kids. And so that's kind of accomplished in that once a week thing that we talked about. But if that's not happening, then at least monthly, maybe a blast email from the center director, or a text that says, hey, here's our monthly activity idea that you guys can do at home with your families. Give and Get Board was something that was born out of the Kentucky Strengthening Families initiative. And I love this idea because parent to parent is always the best opportunity for engagement. And research has shown that over and over again is when parents are helping parents, it's better received than educator to parent, similar to educator. You learn better from a peer that you feel like knows where you're coming from. So a give and get board has been helpful. And so you encourage families to post things that they have to give away and then post things that they need. And just designate or ask a parent to oversee this board maybe every year or maybe every 4 or 5 months. You kind of switch up the parent. Hopes and dreams letters request. So I had that in the enrollment packet, but I love it all by itself. If you don't do it at enrollment, just once a year, wherever it makes sense, you might do the hopes and dreams letters request. It's just a great activity for families and for teachers to get to know families better. And finally, as kids transition out of your early care and education program, set them up for success. So what does that strong transition to kindergarten plan look like? Are you connecting with the local schools? Is it a warm handoff? Can you do a visit with the teacher now to meet the new teacher? Could you do a phone call or a Zoom call to introduce the parent to the new teacher or the new principal? Send families away with all of this great work you've done with them. Send them with, you give this to your child's next teacher. Here's their strengths that we've identified while they've been here. Here's what we've learned about his or her learning style. She learns better if, she's definitely had some time to move and get some energy out, or she's very much a visual learner. Like things that you've learned about these little ones, send that with the parent to the new teacher. Things to know about their unique personality, things that they're challenged with, they're still working on, and how the family is and wants to stay involved. So create a form, at your center that kind of gets to all of these things, and have the families hand it to their kindergarten teacher as they sail off to their next step in the education journey. Those are 20 everyday opportunities. You may have to rewind and slow all that down, but it is in your learning journal, so you can reference that. And this is the end of the introduction. So 1 hour, we got in about as much as we could. We just want you to end here with naming 2 everyday opportunities, strategies, actions, whatever you want to call them, that you're going to use now to begin improving your family partnership. So that might be from that list of 20 I just gave you. You might have sparked your own idea of something you want to try, or it may have come from one of the previous 3 modules. So thanks for joining us, and thanks to our partners, Kentucky Collaborative for Families and Schools and the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood. And hopefully you feel like you can give all the learning objectives a big check mark. You can explain the difference between involvement and partnership. You can list different ways that families can be involved in their education, and a few ways that you can support each of those roles. You know all about the dual capacity model and what that means for early education programming. And hopefully you've just named 2 everyday strategies that you're going to start using now. Thanks for joining us.